Landing here on D-Day at Sword Beach, on time and facing little resistance, the 1st Suffolks would begin to advance inland to their main objective and ultimately Caen. They had yet to fire their weapons in anger, and one company commander even remarked how smoothly the advance was going. It would not last. Making their way through the liberated town of Colleville, just 2 kilometres behind the beachhead, the Suffolk's commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Goodwin, came across their main objective for the day, standing directly in their path to Caen. The site was well documented with aerial photography covering the Strongpoint and its 18 steel and concrete bunkers that were linked by vast trench systems, surrounded by several layers of barbed wire and minefields. The colonel peered up over a cornfield at Hill 61. He could make out very little of the site that was responsible for the command of the entire Orne sector, a force consisting of thousands of men. He could only make out some barbed wire in a single cupola. There was a very good reason for this. Resistance Nest 17 was almost entirely underground and had survived all preliminary bombardments intact, along with its garrison belonging to the 736th Grenadier Regiment, commanded by Colonel Ludwig Krug, a Great War and Eastern Front veteran. The headquarters had also been reinforced by elements retreating from the coast. Intended as an observation and command post to the area, construction started in 1942 and was almost complete by D-Day. It was one of 4 sites clustered in this area. They were the second objectives for D-Day, with the primary ones being in the immediate vicinity of the beaches and of course the beachheads themselves. The 4 sites were named after British car manufacturers at the time, this one being Hillman, then Daimler, Morris and finally Rover. This was more a rear staging area to a local farm than a fortified position. As I mentioned earlier, Hillman was a local HQ for the mother of pearl coast, or Côte de Nacre in French. Famous sites such as Ouistreham and Merville came under its command. In turn, it would then relay messages directly back to Caen. Despite the knowledge of the site's importance, its strength was vastly underestimated. It was believed that only around a platoon of men was stationed here. Naval fire was meant to be available for the assault, but the forward observation bombardment officer responsible for directing this fire was killed, and as such it was unavailable. Nor was most of the armoured support they expected to arrive. Sporadic artillery support was present, but once again due to the site's construction, this was of little use. The men would have to capture Hillman almost alone. Other units tried to bypass the objective once its strength was realised, but they too would come under accurate fire from its elevated position, inflicting heavy casualties and halting their advance. Paths through its barbed wire and minefields were eventually cleared by sappers, and under the cover of artillery and smoke, they assaulted. This was quickly repulsed, but not before losing their second in command, a Captain Riley, amongst others. Consistent attempts were made to neutralise the site, and several medals were awarded for gallantry, including one to a Private Jim Titch Hunter, who charged firing his Bren gun from his hip, silencing a machine gun position. In reality, not counting any casualties, men who fled the position during the night, the 50 or so prisoners taken before its surrender, at daybreak on the 7th of June, dozens more men, led by Colonel Krug and other officers, appeared from their positions and laid down their arms. To the disbelief of the British, they stoically made their way towards them, belongings in hand. There would be a handful of men of the 736th Grenadier Regiment that survived Normandy. The rest of the force ceased to exist. Nevertheless, the damage caused by Hill 61 was extensive, not only in men, but to the Allied plan in the area as a whole. It proved Montgomery's plan to take Caen an objective too far, and allowed other German units to regroup, who in turn caused further damage.